Good morning, my students of class 12 arts. I hope all of you have watched the last videos which I have uploaded, and you know that we are going through this lockdown situation, so we have to continue this week also through the offline classes, right? Please do watch the videos in the YouTube channel of our school, that is Bardhavan Model School, and please, if you have any queries, any doubts, any questions, do ask it through the e-portal. And when we are going to meet after this lockdown period is over through the Skype classes, then you can also ask me if you have noted down, no problem. Okay, so as you know that we are dealing with the Kings and Chronicles, and the chapter we are dealing with today, that is the painted image. So first of all, I have told you in my last class about the chronicles, that how the chronicles were made, right? So today we will see that what was the importance of paintings in those chronicles. As I said that in a chronicle, in one page there was a write-ups, in other page there was the image. Okay, in one page there was a write-up and another page there was the image. Which system, or this system started with Akbar, because Akbar was a completely illiterate man, so he could not read. As he could not read, he used to see the picture, see the image, and he used to give the sanction that yes, it's okay or not. So that's why the images or these paintings, this became very important. Okay, so in Mughal manuscripts, the chronicles narrating the events of a Mughal emperor's reign contained, alongside with the written text, images that described an event in visual form. That means that what I say, that whatever is written in this paper, it's there in that page through paintings. When scenes or themes in a book were to be given visual expression, the scribes left blank spaces on nearby pages. Paintings executed separately by artists were inserted to accompany what was described in words. Very interesting that yes, when we are giving some kind of accountancy or some kind of detail of the profit and loss, there is no need of the image, there is no need of having some kind of image, some kind of picture, nothing is needed, right? But when we are describing, when we are discussing about a particular scenery, about a particular event, about a particular function, then definitely we need a picture, an image which is very suitable. So that's why whenever there is an explanation, whenever there is a need of explanation of events or functions or something, the writers used to make a space blank, and in those spaces blank, the images were painted and then it was inserted inside. Okay. One of the Mughal historian of that time, whose name was Abul Fazl, he described the painting as a magical art. In his view, it had the power to make inanimate objects to look as if they possessed life. That means that he said that it is like a magical work, it's like a magical art, and it had the power to change the words, change what is written into live features, into life possessing figures. So that's why, according to him, it was a magical art, right? The production of paintings, they portrayed the emperor, his court, the people who were part of it, and everyone. But what happened that, according to Muslim orthodoxy, painting was not allowed. But as the Mughals, they followed the Sufi culture, they continued this kind of painting, and they continued this kind of a trend which now has created a new genre of painting which is known as miniature painting. Like I showed you last day also, in this painting you can see a painting of a kitab khana where the manuscripts were made. You can see different people Definitely the painting is very beautiful. It has a 3D character. You know the 3D character when we have discussed it in class 11 in the Renaissance and Reformation movement, that this painting is also having the 3D nature, and you can see different people wearing different kind of dress. Their facial expression is different, their facial hair and the hair, the turbans, they are completely different, and they are doing different type of job. It is available in page number 229, so you can see it, right? And other paintings like what is there, one of the very interesting image here we had. Yes, this is in page number 240. You can see in this image, it's a little later it comes, that it is a image of painting of Dara Shiko's wedding. Who is Dara Shiko? Dara Shiko is the son of Shah Jahan, right? So Dara Shiko's wedding, it's an event. How many people were dressed, what type of gifts were there, how the horses were dressed, how the royal family they were dressed, how the henna applying festival, that means mehendi situation, how the mehendi ritual is going on, how Dara Shiko is ready to be like a bridegroom, and how the women they are dancing in the dancing session, which we call as Sangeet, right? So these are the ways how what is described, because that time photography was not there, that time television was not there, that time selfie cameras was not there. So how to portray the actual culture, the actual color, the actual essence of that particular event? So it was through the paintings. So that is why in Mughal chronicles, in Mughal history, the paintings and their importance was huge, right? Okay, the next topic which you have in your syllabus, that is the Akbarnama or the Badshah-nama, where we have to discuss about the chronicle, that is Akbarnama. So I have decided that in my next class I am going to talk about, give a note of this Badshah-nama. You don't have to understand a lot of it, you just have to write it down, and if one questions can come, it's a very simple question, that what were the details and description of the Akbarnama. So I will give you a note. Let me complete this chapter, the discussion part. Let me complete the discussion part of this chapter, then I will give the note of this Akbarnama. So I am moving to the part of point number 5, that is the ideal kingdom. The court chronicles, they, upon many sources, they wanted to show that the power of the Mughal kings, they directly came from God. This you all know, that all over the world, wherever the kings and the emperors they used to rule, they wanted to have a divine sanction. They wanted to show the link with the God for the acceptance of the people, right? So here also from the Mughal chronicles we came to know that these Mughal chronicles also showed that the rule of the Mughals, they came from the gods. And there was a legend that narrated that a Mongol queen whose name was Alenquer, who was impregnated by a ray of sunshine while resting in her tent. The offspring she bore carried this divine light and passed it on generation to generation. That means this Mongol queen, who was directly the descendant of Genghis Khan, Genghis Khan's granddaughter, whose name was Alenquer, who was married to the Timurid dynasty, and it's a legend that when she was resting in her tent and she became pregnant by the sun rays, the rays of a god, and whatever was done that time, she gave a birth of a boy whose name was Babur, and he came up with a kind of a halo, which was like a sun behind his head, and he had the power to rule the people, and he transferred that halo, he transferred his divine power to his next generation and generation after generation. Can't you see a similarity with this in our Brahmanical factor? Yes, you are true, if you have agreed, if you have recognized it, that is Kunti. Kunti was there, and it was told that Kunti was impregnated by the sun rays of sun, and he gave birth of Karna, right? So I told you that this is how the idea of a kingdom was created in Mughal Empire. In my next class, I'll discuss the details. Thank you.